Welcome to Web Technologies training program. In this lesson we are going to understand the Angular validations. In the last class we have created the registration form, right? So inside the same registration form we are going to add the validations. So what is validation exactly, if you can recollect? Earlier also we have created validations in Bootstrap. So validations is a concept of checking the input values whether those are correct or not. If the value is valid, we are going to display one message. If the value is invalid, we are going to display another message. So the success message will be appear if the value is valid. The error message will be appear in case of it is invalid. The success message should be displayed in green color. Error message should be displayed in red color. Also, we can additionally display the submit button. In the submit button, we can verify whether the complete form is valid or invalid. If the complete form is valid, then we are going to execute the program for storing the data into the necessary storage. For example, local storage in our example. So if the form is invalid, at least one text box is invalid, then we are going to stop the execution of the saving program, and we can display the appropriate message to user. Please enter the correct values, etc. So in order to implement these validations, Angular provides necessary predefined classes and also necessary predefined properties. What are the predefined classes that are provided by Angular? ng invalid, ng valid, ng pristine, ng dirty, ng focus and blur. So let us understand the 6 important Angular validation related classes. Then we will discuss about the Angular properties. So let's check. List of Angular classes for validations. The first one, ng pristine, ng pristine, ng dirty, ng touched, ng untouched, ng valid, ng invalid. We have given a brief overview about all these classes in the yesterday lesson. Let us try to recollect the same and also proceed with the practical use of all these things. So first of all, these classes will be applied only depending on the situation, based on the value that is modified by user or entered by user. For example, if you can notice the name text box, I am trying to open the name text box, have a notice. So I am going to check the name text box. Inside the app root we have div, inside that we have app registration, and inside that we have a div, and inside that we have a form, inside that we have a form group. Let's open the correct form group, and there itself we have a text box. By default, this text box is untouched. By default, any text box that you have is untouched. Untouched indicates the value, the text box is not touched by user. That means the user did not click on the text box at least once. Once the user clicks on the text box and go out of the text box, automatically it becomes as touched. Once cursor in plus cursor out is equal to touched. So by default the class is ng untouched. Suppose we have clicked on the text box and click outside. Now the same text box become touched. ng untouched has been replaced with ng touched. Same way, once we type some value, and of course we have mentioned required equal to required, and now it is ng valid, which means that required equal to required says that it cannot be blank. Now some value has been typed by the user, right? So the value is valid, right? So if the text box is having valid, the class ng valid automatically gets applied. And if the user has not modified the value, then it is called as ng pristine. If the user has modified the text box value, it becomes ng dirty. So overall, out of these 6, any one will be applied, either ng pristine or ng dirty, ng valid or ng invalid, either ng touched, untouched, either of these only gets applied. Alternatively, so at a time there is a maximum possibility of applying 3 classes in this list. Out of the 6, only 3 will be gets applied maximum. Either pristine or dirty anyone compulsory, either touched or untouched anyone, and either valid or invalid anyone. It is not possible to apply valid plus invalid at a time to the same text box. Notice these classes gets applied automatically by Angular depending on the value what is entered by user. As a developer, we can just only read these particular values and accordingly we can show the styles to the particular text boxes. So let us try to understand when these classes will be applied, when it is not. So sorry, this class gets applied when the text box value not modified not modified by user. That indicates modified by user. So ng pristine indicates the text box value is not modified by the user. That indicates modified by user. When the text box is touched by user, it will be touched. When the text box is untouched by user or is not touched by user, it will be untouched. Next, this class gets applied when the text box value is valid. And ng invalid gets applied if it is invalid. So check the classes. ng pristine gets applied when the text box value is not modified by user. Text box value is not modified by the user. Whatever the default value of the text box, the same is being displayed as it is. If that is the case, ng pristine gets applied. If the user has intentionally modified the value, that means at least one character has been typed by the user, then the class is going to be ng30. But once it becomes 30, it cannot be pristine by default. ng touched will be when the text box is touched by user, that means cursor in plus cursor out, it becomes touched. Once it becomes touched, it never be untouched again. Untouched means the user is not touched the text box. Valid means the text box value is valid. Invalid means the text box value is invalid. So these are the 6 classes gets applied automatically behalf of the validations. So based on these classes, we can apply the corresponding CSS styles. So check the CSS styles. If it is valid and ng touched, that means it is modified by user, and it is valid. If that is the case, we are going to apply green color border, otherwise red color border. So presently the text box value is modified, at the same time it is valid, so green color. In case if it is invalid, you can see red color border. Similarly, email, password, for all these things we can apply required. So for all these, either green or red is being applied. Okay, We have not applied for receive newsletters, gender and country. Date of joining also is mandatory. Okay. So, we have applied necessary validations for all these. Next, let us add the necessary validation rules for the fields. So, for example, the name is required. At the same time, I want to accept alphabets only. The name should be required, at the same time alphabets only. How to accept alphabets only? We have to apply the regular expressions. Whenever we say the value is valid, we are going to say it's required. Whenever you have a requirement saying that alphabets only or numbers only or email address or phone numbers, if these are the cases, we have to use regular expressions. In HTML5, we have essential attributes to apply the validation rules. Required says that it is mandatory. Pattern says that it is a regular expression. Based on the regular expression, we can specify the rules like alphabets or numbers or emails, all these things. So, let us apply the necessary pattern and required for the text boxes. So, check it. For the first one, for the first text box, we are going to apply the regular expression, that is A to Z. That means only alphabets accepted. Let us apply the pattern for email address. Pattern is equal to email. For the email address, suitable pattern is this one. Specify that this is the email address. And for the password and confirm password, we are not applying any regular expressions. Also, for number, we are going to accept only numericals. So, we are going to add pattern is equal to cap symbol, which indicates the beginning of the number 0 to 9, star means any number of digits, and dollar means ending. So, this pattern specifies that we are going to accept the numerical values only. And also, so the name should be alphabets only. In case if you have entered any digits, it is showing error message. And email address should be in a correct format. Suppose we have entered some wrong email address, it will show the error message, I mean the red color border at least. In case if you have entered the correct values, then only it is going to be accepting. Password cannot be blank, confirm password also cannot be blank. And annual income must be number. If you enter the strings, it is going to be error. It must be number. For example, only digits. Okay, so we have entered the name, email, password, confirm password, annual income, all these regular expressions we have applied. So, next let us apply necessary error messages. So, in order to display error messages, what we have to try to do? We have to identify the status of the properties. If the value is invalid, then only we are going to show the error message, and also we have to identify the type of the error message. Why it is going to be errored? Is it errored because of required, or is it errored because of pattern? What is the reason of the error? Based on the reason of the error, we have to display the error message. So, in order to identify the reason of the error, we have a predefined property called errors. And in order to identify whether it is touched or valid, we are having the respective properties like valid, invalid, touched, untouched. This type of properties we have. Based on these properties, we are able to identify the current status of the text box exactly. Accordingly, we can show or hide the appropriate error message. So, let us try to understand the validation related properties in Angular. So, let us check it. list of Angular properties for validations. The first one is untouched, touched, valid, invalid, pristine, dirty, and errors. These are the 7 properties available for validations. So the first one is untouched. Untouched can be the true or false. Untouched will be true if the text box value is not touched by user. This will be false in case if the value is touched by user. Next, same like this, touched can be true or false. If the text box is touched by user, this will be true. Not touched by user, this will be false. Just opposite of the untouched. Valid will be true or false, which means that the text box value is valid. Next, text box value is invalid. So if the text box value is valid, it will be true, otherwise false. Then opposite of the same is nothing but invalid. Opposite of the same is invalid. So true means invalid, false means valid. Next one, pristine. If the text box is not modified by user, pristine will be true. Next, if it is modified by the user, this will be false. Opposite of the same is dirty. Modified means true, not modified means false. Next, errors. Next, errors. To identify the list of errors, we have errors. So required will be true if it is error, if it is invalid because of required rule. Same like this, we have pattern. If it is invalid because of pattern, it is errors equal. This will be true. So these 7th one will be used to identify the reason of the error. So to identify if it is invalid because of required, we are going to check this errors dot required. If it is errored because of pattern rule, this will be true. So we are going to check the type of the error in the second one. All this previous already we have seen. So untouched will be true if the text box is not touched. Touched will be true if the text box value is touched by user. Valid will be true if the text box is valid. Invalid will be true if the text box is invalid. Pristine will be true in case if it is not modified, and so on. So now let us check how to display the corresponding messages. For example, we have a message saying that looks good. When I would like to show this message is that whenever the username is valid, at the same time, if it is valid, we are going to show this. So *ng if whenever this username, how to identify this username? We are going to apply some reference name for this. In order to create reference name for this, we are going to have hash followed by the reference name, for example T1 is equal to the ng model. That means we are going to create a reference name for this ng model. So through this name T1 we are going to access this ng model. This T1 is like a nickname or reference name. So in order to do so, what we have to do, T1 dot in or valid. If the T1 is valid, then only we are going to show this. It is valid. At the same time, if it is touched by user, then only we are going to show this message. In what color? Green color. To apply the green color, we are going to apply text success. Text success specifies that it is green color. So we have typed the value. The text box value is valid, right? Then it is going to show the message looks good. Next, if it is invalid, we are going to show another message. So let's create another span which is for invalid. Another span for invalid. If it is invalid, we are going to show the message it is invalid. That means the name cannot be blank. But when this has to be shown, if it is invalid, at the same time it is touched, at the same time another condition is the errors should be required error. In case if it is having required error, then only we are going to show this message name cannot be blank. And for pattern error, we are going to have another error message saying that name can contain only alphabets. So if it is errored because of pattern, then only we are going to show the message name can contain only alphabets. So there are two validation rules that is required in pattern. If it is required, if it is the errored because of required, we are going to show the first message. Otherwise, we are going to show the second message. So let us check this. As of now, the text box is not touched by user. That's why no message. So in case if it is touched at the same time, we are going to type some value. As it is valid, we are going to show the message looks good. If it is invalid, we are going to show the other message, but it should be in which color? Red color, right? To apply the red color, we are going to say danger, means red color. In Bootstrap we have some different colors, right? So if it is invalid because of required rule, we are going to show the message like name cannot be blank. If it is invalid because of pattern rule, we are going to show another message saying that name can contain only alphabets. So the same span tags can be repeated for remaining also, right? So let's apply reference name for the text box. Hash T2 is equal to ng model, and also the span tags. But wherever we are having T1, we have to replace with T2, because T2 is representing the email text box. And what should be the message for this? Email cannot be blank and email is invalid. So if it is invalid because of required rule, we are going to show one message email cannot be blank. If it is invalid because of pattern rule, we are going to show another message called email is invalid. Either of these only will get applied. Similarly, we are going to display the password. For the password, only the first two span tags are enough, because we are not having pattern for the password. So hash T3 is equal to ng model. We are going to have a span tag. If the T3 is invalid because of required rule, then only we are going to show the message password cannot be blank. here T2, right? Okay, so password cannot be blank. And for the confirm password also, only first two spans are enough. So first let's apply the reference name for the text box. Hash T4 is equal to ng model. That means if you want to access this particular text box, we can call it with the name called T4. Then we are going to apply T4, means text box 4. If it is valid, we are going to show the message like looks good. If it is invalid because of required rule, then we are going to show the message called confirm password cannot be blank. And let's apply annual income. For the annual income, the reference name is going to be T5 is equal to ng model, and for the annual income 3 span tags are required, 2 error message plus 1 success, which is much like this one. These 3 span tags are required because we are having this pattern. What is the reference name for this? T5. Let's replace T5. And then the message is going to be annual income, annual income. So annual income cannot be blank. This is one message. Another message is annual income should contain numbers. And actually for this required rule is not there, right? So we can remove this one. So only one message is enough. That is going to be pattern. So because only we have a pattern for the annual income. So we have applied the error message for all these. So if it is invalid, we are going to show the message like all these things. If it is invalid, we are going to show the message like email cannot be blank, and email is invalid in case if it is pattern wise wrong. If the value is correct, we are going to show the message like looks good. Okay, so for all these validations have been added. And finally, we are going to display the console message. In case if it is invalid, we are not going to submit the data. At the same time, we are going to display the message saying that, okay, let's apply T5. T5 is undefined. It is saying there is some error. T5 hash is missing here, right? So hash T5. Let's check the message again. Okay, so what it is going to show? Invalid form. So finally, we have completed the validations for registration form. Let us repeat the same for login form. Login form also most similar to registration form, and also it is containing only the two fields, that is username and password. So only the username, password we are going to accept. For username, only required rule. For the password, again required rule. For the username, we are going to accept alphabets, digits and spaces. So other characters not accepted. For the password, minimum it should be containing 6 characters. So these are the rules that we are going to check. So let us see how to create the login form and how to apply the validation error message for that. Okay, let's check here. So first let's check, are we having login form here? No, we are not having login form. Let us create the login form and copy the necessary code from the registration form. How to create the new component? ng component. We are going to create a component called login. we are going to create the component called login. So the login component has been created. So once we have created the login component, we just go to the login.component.ts and also login.component.html. So for this login component, if you can open the login.component.ts, so already we are having some code for the on login click method, but for this we are going to keep the condition required. What is the condition we have? Required. Required equal to required, which means that it is mandatory, compulsory to enter. Also we have something called pattern. What is the pattern for email address? Email address pattern is this one. This is the pattern for email address. So it should be containing no spaces and @gmail.com etc. compulsory. And let's apply span tags. So we are going to add a span tag. This should be displayed only in case if the form is invalid. So hash T1 is equal to ng model. T1 is nothing but a reference name. Based on that reference name, we are going to access this text box. So T1 dot invalid and T1 dot touched and T1 dot errors dot required. If it is required if it is error because of required error, then only we are going to show the message called email cannot be blank. And also we are going to show another message, that is email is invalid. When this message has to be shown if it is error because of pattern error. And also these two messages should be appear in red color. So class is equal to text danger, because in Bootstrap text danger indicates red color. So go to your login form, and if it is invalid, we are going to show the message email cannot be blank, and password also same. For the password, required equal to required, which means that it is mandatory, and at the same time we have to apply only one span tag. And what should be the reference name for the password? T2. T2 is equal to ng model. Whenever the T2 is invalid and at the same time it is touched and at the same time it is error because of required rule, then we are going to show the message password cannot be blank. So email is invalid because of required rule, password is invalid because of required rule. We are going to type some email address right now. It is invalid because of pattern rule. So the message has been changed. Now it is valid and password also valid. Then the login form is working and the email address and password is wrong. That's why it is showing invalid login. That's okay. So this is how to implement various types of validations in the registration form as well as login form. So validation is the concept of checking the input values whether those are correct or not. If the values are valid, then we are going to show the success message to user. If it is invalid, we are going to show the another message to user. In order to work with all these things, the Angular provides necessary predefined classes and properties for working with the validations. What are the predefined classes? ng touched, ng invalid, ng touched, ng untouched, ng valid, ng invalid, ng pristine, ng dirty. These are the 6 classes that are having applied automatically by Angular. And also it is providing 7 properties for displaying the validation error messages, like a touched, untouched, valid, invalid, pristine, dirty, and errors. Based on this, we can show or hide the message. So, and why we are using ngIf? ngIf is used to check the condition. Based on the condition, we are going to show or hide the message. If the condition is true, the information will be appear, otherwise will be hidden. So how the error message will be appear dynamically based on the value. Whenever we have typed some value in the text box, automatically Angular will check, okay, this text box value is modified, and it is comparing the text box value with the set of rules that we have mentioned in the tag. We are generally mentioning required and pattern type of errors in the tag. Suppose the text box value is empty. So as per the required, it is saying that it is mandatory, compulsory to enter. And as per the actual value, the text box is empty. So it is not following the rule, right? Required saying that the text box cannot be blank. Text box is really blank. That's why automatically it is applying the necessary class like ng invalid. Based on that ng invalid class, the the span tag is going to be appear automatically, because in the ngIf what we are trying to do, we are trying to check the corresponding validation property, and if the value is true, then only we are going to show the message, otherwise we are hiding. So that is the reason finally the text box is going to be appearing. So Angular duty is that dynamically checking the text box value and applying the classes automatically, and developer responsibility is that checking the validation properties and showing the error message is the responsibility of the developer itself. This is how to implement validations. So in the next moment we are going to implement some pipes. What is pipe? Pipe means we are trying to convert the value before printing. There is a value, before the printing I want to convert. Whenever you want to convert the value before printing, we have to use pipe. For example, I want to convert the number into some text based format. Instead of displaying the number, for example 100, we are going to display the text like the complete spelling we are going to display. So to convert the value before printing, we have to use the pipes. And there are several predefined pipes called number, currency, etc. So let us try to implement all these pipes practically. So check there. Pipes. Pipes are used to convert the value before printing. Before printing, if you want to convert the value, we have to use the pipes. For example, we have a value 10. We have to give the value 10 to the pipe. What this pipe will do, it will convert the same into words, for example 10. So the input that we are providing is the real number, but the pipe is receiving it and converting the value into the corresponding format called 10. So this kind of conversions are done by the pipe. So let us try to implement the pipes. In our application, I am going to implement pipes in the about page. So let's go to about component. Let's go to about component, and inside the component we are going to have necessary properties. For example, we are having something called as number. N value is number data type. In the constructor, we are going to initialize a value. For example, the n is equal to 80,000. So I want to display this particular value as it is. To display the value as it is, we don't require any pipe. But I want to convert the value, then display means then we have to use pipe. How to display the value? If you want to display the value of n as it is, we can use the interpolation binding, right? So here the n value is going to appear as it is. See, as it is, the n value, that is 80,000, is being displayed as it is. But I want to convert this value into digit grouping. For every 3 digits you want to apply grouping. What we have to try to do at that time, we have to call a pipe, hey pipe, take this particular value and convert the value. So we are going to apply pipe symbol followed by the number. So what happens right now, we are not going to print the value directly. First value is given to pipe, is going to be given the value. The pipe result value is being displayed in the output. So what is the pipe we are using right now? Number. Here number is not a data type, number is a pipe here. So this pipe is receiving this particular value n and then converting the same into digit grouping. The converted output is going to be displayed in the result. So similarly, let's apply another one, that is currency. What this currency will do, it is also digit grouping, and at the same time decimal places will be added, that is 0 0, and also the currency symbol also will be gets added. The default currency symbol is $, and we can change the currency symbol by providing an argument value for the pipe. Pipe argument value is nothing but colon. Let's apply, for example, INR, means Indian rupees. So now we can notice the Indian rupee symbol has been displayed because we have mentioned INR. The default value here itself is USD. That means dollar symbol will be displayed by default. If you don't mention anything, also by default dollar. And in case if you want to display Indian rupees, we have to go for INR. So like this, we have several predefined pipes. So we are going to discuss about the pipes exclusively separately in the further lessons. So that's all for today. Do practice and thank you.